Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Mortgage Coach sales meeting every Tuesday, 9 o'clock Pacific. We're here to deliver value and education. My name is Dave Savage. I think you all know that we are just totally dedicated to your personal and your professional success. The values that drive Mortgage Coach are WOW. I mean, the name of the company is actually WOW Tools, and helping you guys wow and surpass the expectations of your clients through education and just doing it at a level of excellence. Got a great leader today. First time I've had Ann, I almost said your name wrong, although I'm going to try to say it right. Ann Loehr, is that right, Ann?
Ann Loehr, that's great, Dave.
Hey, welcome to the call, and it's great to have you on a Mortgage Coach call for the first time.
Thanks for inviting, and Happy New Year to everybody.
Yeah, right on. Well, Ann's going to talk and help us define, what is a millennial, Gen X, baby boomer, and what's the language? How can we connect better with folks in different generations than ourselves? And so I think it's a great way to kick off the year. Also, we have Dan Keller. I've had Dan many times as a guest. We've done a lot of education, a lot of teaching together, Dan. It's great to have you, brother.
No, I'm excited, Dave. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, always good to have you. So we're going to have Ann first, then we're going to bring in Dan. Before we do that, I just want to kick off a few things for all you Mortgage Coach members. Make sure everybody is getting our emails. So you should have got an email that looked like this in your inbox. If you didn't, it means it's getting blocked by spam. Let's make sure that we have the permission to email you and that you're getting emails. In that email, we were driving the Josh Metal coaching call. Of all the calls that we've done recently, this one I think is the best training call. It's both inspirational and it's just got a lot of great sales scripts to help. Whether you're an advanced Mortgage Coach member, there's something of value for you. And if you've created less than 20 Mortgage Coach reports, I mean, this is just essential training. So make sure you check it out. Also, in that same email, we highlighted some compliance insights. I mean, this year is going to be a year of how do we turn the sales process into something that's more compliant. We're going to have a new GFE. We're going to have new integrated disclosures. So, big year for how we change our sales process. And here's a link for Mortgage Coach keeping you up on that. And then, as you all know, we rolled out Rate Watch in the second or the fourth quarter. Big announcement from us, big product, and this is a video to help drive some education around that. Dan, by the way, are you using the Rate Watch app very often?
Absolutely, every single morning and throughout the day when I'm not in my office. Yeah.
Right on. So if you haven't downloaded it and installed it, make sure you do, and make sure you watch this video to talk about how you can use it more effectively. Also, it is formal. We have announced the best, most watched Mortgage Coach calls of the year. Dan Keller, you made the list of one of the top 12 Mortgage Coach calls. So out of 52 calls like the one we're doing today, these were the 12 that were the most attended and that had the most reviews. Ken DeLeon, the #1 loan officer, realtor in America, I think we had over 2,700 views of that coaching call. But Dan, you made the list, and thank you for all the value you create, brother.
Wow, thank you. No, look at all those superstars on there. That Josh Metal one you just talked about, if our listeners haven't heard that, go listen to that today. It's absolutely brilliant.
Right on. Well, hey, the only thing that was upsetting to me is that we only had one woman leader, Nikki Groff. So one of my goals this year is what are we going to do to get more women leaders in Mortgage Coach and to be the most viewed, the most watched. These were 4 of the women that I think were really close. I would say they were in the top 20. Nikki made one of the top 12. These Louise, Cindy, and Felicia were right there. So again, if you are a woman leader in the Mortgage Coach community and you want to share ideas and strategies, send me an email, Dave@Mortgage Coach. And if you know someone that is a woman leader, make sure you let me know because we need more women leadership in the Mortgage Coach educational platform. So let's roll into millennial transformational leadership, from a generational guru. This was a video that I did several months ago with the guys over at RE Source TV. If you did not watch this, just a quick 5-minute, really fun but really useful video on how we as loan officers and realtors could better connect with millennials. That's one of my goals with Ann today. So I met Ann a couple months ago, and I knew from the very first time we had a conversation, this is a woman that I need to interview. This is a woman that we need to bring into the mortgage coach community. Really excited to bring Ann in as our first call to kick off 2015. And before we roll, if you could just tell us a little bit about your backstory and you know, to be a generational guru, what is that?
Thanks, Dave. Really, really excited to be here today. So very quick backstory, because people can always look me up online, is graduated from university, had 2 different companies in East Africa, sold both of them successfully, came back to the States about a decade ago, and people said, well, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'm out of hospitality. I never want to see another tourist. I never want to see another plane full of tourists. And they said, well, why don't you just do what you did, which is developing talent, but do it outside. So now I'm an outside consultant. I work for large organizations such as Merrill, Morgan Stanley, John Hancock, Facebook, Coca-Cola. And it was actually the Washington Post that dubbed me the generational guru based on all the information and experience that I can share with leaders on how to market to and build teams with the different generations.
I love that. I love that. So here we are. We have someone who is training and on retainer with companies like Facebook, like some of the biggest financial institutions in America, and she's going to unpack, you know, who are baby boomers, who are Gen X, and really break this down for us. So, and I know you're going to kick things off with a bit of a kind of a TED-like presentation around generational leadership. I have passed the screen to you, so if you could grab the screen and kind of walk us through what generation, you know, who are the different generations, and then let's kind of take that conversation into how can we, given that the mortgage space is mostly, you know, 50 plus, how can we as either, you know, Xers or boomers better connect and better lead the new generation?
Great. So I've taken over the screen. Dave, just want to make sure you can see it before I begin.
I can see it. Let's roll.
Excellent. Let's roll. So again, thanks everybody. Really looking forward to today. So we're going to start by talking first with a question. And here's the $1 million question for all of you. And it's going to be rhetorical because I'm not going to have you raise your hands and go off mute. And the question is this, Dave. How many Americans are turning 60 every single day? And when I ask this in large audiences, people say 100,000, 2,000. Well, the answer is actually 10,000 people in America are turning 60 every day. Now that's a great number for Trivial Pursuit, those types of games, but the number that people really need to start paying attention to in our world, in the financial industry, is that 43% of our workforce is going to be leaving their regular 9-to-5 jobs, full-time employment, within the next decade. So Dan, you can imagine what that means in terms of if people are leaving their jobs, what does that look like in terms of loans? What does that look like in terms of second houses? What are they going to be doing? But 43% of our workforce is going to be leaving. And people say to me, well, why is that? Well, what we're going to do today is talk about who are the generations, who's leaving, and how do I communicate with them, whether they're leaving or not. So first, let's take a look at what you see right here, which is who are the generations? And I'm going to explain it by colors and tell you a little bit about them, and then we're going to actually look at the numbers. So looking at this pie chart, we have 4 different generations in the workforce. It's the first time ever in U.S. history of 4 generations: traditionalists, boomers, X, and Y. Traditionalists, there's only a few left actually in the workforce, and they're mostly in my town, Washington, D.C., because they're still on the Hill. Otherwise, mainstream America, not too many traditionalists still in the workforce. Then we have baby boomers. Boomers are born between 46 to 1964. They are still the biggest generation just by a hair, and obviously the biggest generation in the workforce. After that, we have Gen X. Gen X is born between 1965 to 1980. There's a couple different names for them. I'll explain them later. Sometimes they're known as XS. Sometimes they're also known as the Me generation. We'll get into that. And then finally, we have Gen Y, the dark blue there. Now, again, this is just who's in the workforce. I'll show you numbers of population in a minute, but as you can see, they're still only the 3rd biggest population in the workforce. However, in terms of numbers, as you all know as loan officers, they are just a hair smaller than boomers. It's the biggest generation that there is, born between 1981 and 2001. So you can start to see who's in the workforce. Taking that number, about 43% are leaving. what you're going to see in the next decade is that that boomer number is going to go down by a half to a third. The X number is going to stay the same. I'm Gen X, and so we're all in the workforce. But that number right there for the Gen Y, the dark blue, is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and the wealth is going to transfer from the boomers to the X and then on to the Y. If you want to actually look at who we're looking at today, I just focus on the big three for today. Those are the boomers, X, and Y. And let's actually look at the number. So you can start to see right here, this is the number. Now, again, not all Gen Y are in the workforce yet. Some of them are still in high school, but you can see it back to that pie chart, what's going to happen when 28% of our population gets into the workforce as the boomers start to move out. So that gives you a very quick snapshot of who it is: traditionalists, boomers, X and Y, generally the years that they're born, their population, and the percentages about the workforce. But now it's important to understand, now that I understand that, what does that actually mean for who they are? Like, what does it matter? People say to me all the time, but Ann, like, we're all over 18. We all have some kind of education. Why is it such a big deal? Why can't we all just get along? And what I say, based on my time in Africa, is that I had to get 42 tribes to work together. And learning how to do that, I realized that there is some commonality, but there also are some differences. So to build hotels and to build safaris, I had to learn how to get the 42 tribes to speak a common language, understand what motivates them, understand what excites them, and then I could get them to do whatever it is that needed to be done. And so the impact is that for you to understand, how do I get those Gen Y to buy more homes? How do I be a more effective loan officer for Gen X? You have to understand what shaped them. What you see right here is that there are three things that shaped every generation: societal events, technological events, and political events. And these three together at that nexus right there is how we define a generation. A generation is just a fancy word for a group of people who were born about the same period of time. However, each group had different events, social, political, and technological, that happened when they were born that sent a message to them. They took that message and then they created their own personality, their own psyche, their own belief system. So the more that you as loan officers understand their psyche and personality, the more that you understand how they think, the more effective you will be. So what I'm going to do right now is take you on a walk through history. You're going to see a number of slides wash over you. We're going to start with boomers, and then X, and then Y, and you're going to see them wash over you, and I'm going to explain what they mean, and then we'll do a summary at the end so that you can understand better why each generation is different, and then we'll move on to that. Well, that's great, but how do I actually speak to them? So let's start with boomers. Again, boomers are born between 46 to 64. If you think about what shaped this generation politically, it was a crazy time. It was a tumultuous time. We have Hawks, we have Doves, we have Vietnam, we have all kinds of things happening. We have Kent State. And what did this generation do? The biggest generation, they said, we shall overcome. It sounds trite to the younger generations, but it was a very big deal for the biggest generation to come together to overcome adversity so that they can make a difference. And we'll get into the details later, but you can start to understand what it was that shaped them. The man on the moon, obviously a huge influence as well. If we get into Gen X, what is different about this time? What is it that was happening in the 70s that shaped this generation politically, technologically, and societally? As you can start to see, again, a very crazy time in a different way. Not necessarily my political beliefs, but as you start to look at the media, we go from a Camelot in the White House to a crook in the White House with Watergate. We go from man on the moon to Challenger explosion. We go to all of a sudden technology is possible, divorce rates are skyrocketing, women are working, and it sent a very different message to this generation, and they came out thinking differently about it and how they wanted to be seen in the world and how they wanted to respond to the world. And then finally, before we go into the summary, let's look at Gen Y, millennials, born between 81 and 2001. What did they see that shaped their psyche, their language? Again, a very different time. What was happening in the 90s that shaped this generation? Well, again, very politically different. If there was one thing that shaped this generation, it was 9/11. Doesn't mean that 9/11 did not impact every single person in this country. But think about it. At this point, we are streaming information. At the JFK assassination, you read it in the paper, you saw it on the 8 o'clock news. If you are growing up as a teenager at 9/11, you are seeing those Twin Towers fall again and again and again. And it sent one message to this generation. That message is connection. This generation wants to connect with you as their loan officer, with their community, with their people. So that was a very quick summary, and now I'm going to go into more detail to help you understand who are these generations, what makes them different, what makes them the same, and what do I need to know so that I can connect with them better as we talk about their personal finances. So let's go back to the boomers. Again, boomers are born between 46 and 64. So what shaped them? Here are some of the events that shaped them, that created their psyche. Again, it was a tumultuous time, and this generation said, we shall overcome. This generation said anything is possible because we landed a man on the moon. This generation said we made a difference with Vietnam, with women's rights, and we are going to continue to make a difference. So if you think about their traits, and this is what's important for you to pay attention to. If you forget everything else, Dave and Dan, to remember the traits of who you are dealing with, here's what you need to know about baby boomers before you get into conversations with them about their finances. First of all, this generation is idealistic and cause-driven. They did change the world. They changed how we look at Vietnam. They changed how we look at women's rights. They changed how we look at civil rights. We have a lot to thank boomers for. And so as you're talking to them about their finances, you need to pump it up. You need to ramp it up to some kind of cause. They're not just buying a house. They are buying something that they can live in, a community that it matches their idealistic vision. They are team-focused. This makes Gen X crazy. But they are team-focused. They are we-focused. They are consensus-focused. They make decisions together. So you're not going to have just one conversation. You're going to have many conversations with different people in the family and the community to make sure that they understand what is important. Finally, this generation is the only generation, and I stress that, the only generation that is macro and micro detailed. They want the features and the benefits. What do I mean by that? Well, let me tell you, this generation saw very early on that they needed more women on the Hill. They needed more women in legislation. But when they looked, they saw that there were not enough women in law school. Stanford is only just allowing women in law school. So this generation saw the macro vision to say, to change the world, we need more women on the Hill. And then they took it down to law schools and said, get us more women into law schools. Let us help you figure out how to do it. So when you're talking to this generation, when you're trying to negotiate with this generation, remembering these things about them, to use the language about team, of we, together, we will make a difference, you'll be that much more successful. Now let's go on to Gen X and the summary for Gen X. So again, when we think about this generation born between 65 and 80, and you think what shaped them, you can start to understand why this generation can be seen sometimes as skeptical. I get it all the time. And Gen X, they're so skeptical. They're hard to get to know. They're hard to trust. What's up with them? And I say to them, well, do you really expect any different? Because think about it. All of a sudden, we're going to Watergate, so I can't trust my government. All of a sudden, divorce rates are skyrocketing. So all of a sudden, those terms, latchkey kid, before school daycare, after school daycare, they never existed before this generation. All of a sudden, I am expected to take care of me. I have to put the key in. I have to go home. There's no milk and cookies on the table. I'm doing my own homework. And then on the weekends, I'm shuttled to my other parents' home. It's a very different way of life. So the government, I can't trust. They're not going to take care of me. My family, really not necessarily going to take care of me either. So you know what? I am going to take care of me. And that is why we are called the me generation. Our focus is nuclear. Boomers are big. They're macro. Gen X is micro. We are nuclear. We're going to take care of our nuclear part first before we go to the macro. So as you start to think about this generation, very self-sufficient. This generation, if they have a college degree, The second degree that they will have is an MBA. I'm going to go out, I'm going to make some money, I'm going to take care of myself and my family. This generation, the highest buyer of lottery tickets. They will take risks if the risks are worth it. This generation is based on data. They want to know the numbers. They want to know exactly what's in it for me. Think about the movies we saw. Gordon Gekko, Greed is Good. Tom Cruise, Show Me the Money. Okay, so this generation, there's that term WIIFM, what's in it for me? Very Gen X. Prove it to me. Show it to me. I'm going to think about it. And then the good news, though, is once you sway us, Gen X, we are very, very loyal. Takes a little longer to sway us, but once you sway us, very, very loyal to you. So let's move on to Gen Y, and then I'm going to stop and let Dave and Dan ask any questions they have before we move on to the language piece. So let's look at Gen Y. So Gen Y, also known as millennials, also known as the net, as an internet generation. What is it about this generation that shaped them? So absolutely 9/11. Also, if you start to think about what was going on with this generation, you can start to see how the world becomes much smaller. These are what we call our global citizens. These people think nothing of taking best practices from around the world, looking at what's going on around the world, and putting it together to make sense. They're what we call your digital natives. So the joke is that this generation was born with a mouse in their hand. They are digital natives. Gen X are digital parents. And boomers, no offense to any boomers on the call, are the grandparents of the parents back in the home country when it comes to using technology, just like Dave and Dan are doing, to modernize, to disrupt industries. This generation is all about diversity. They do not see color. They do not see sexual orientation. They do not see anything. This is the blended family generation where we have blended families, sometimes even 3 families blended together. And again, if there is one word that describes this generation, one word that you want to use as you're thinking about working with them, it is about connection and it is about purpose. Remember, boomers were wide, X's are narrow. Think of wide as double boomers. They are wide, wide. They are our entrepreneurs. They are our Renaissance people. If they have 1 degree and they get a second college degree, it is almost always never in their first degree. They want to know a lot about a lot of things. And so for you, when you're thinking about their finances, you need to connect it to a greater purpose. They're not just buying X, whatever the X is. They are actually going to be making a bigger difference than boomers wanted. What is the purpose of this community? What is the purpose of this home? That is what is important for you to connect with. So Dave and Dan, I know I downloaded a lot. I know we're going to still get into the language that you use, but before we do that, I want to check if any questions came in, and also just want to check if either of you have any questions about the 3 generations.
Well, first of all, I mean, that was a great download. Well, I've read a lot of posts. I've done a lot of studying. I've even done some speaking on it. I got a lot of takeaways. I'm really looking forward to the language. But Dan, any questions or any comments for you so far?
No, this is just unbelievably valuable, and I'm writing as fast as I can. So no, keep going. I'm all ears. This is awesome.
Yeah. So no, I can't wait to hear your recommendations on the language. And then Dan and I will kind of bring it to the market on what can a loan officer do to take some action on it.
Perfect, perfect. And again, and I know, Dave, you're going to mention it later, but I do have a cheat sheet. So anybody who wants a cheat sheet with all this information, you can email me later and you'll have all this. So Dan, you don't have to write quite so fast and furiously. So, all right, so let's talk about multi-generational communication. So it's not rocket science now. This is on the cheat sheet, the actual words that you use. So you can start to understand now how you're going to tailor your language based on what shaped each generation. It's what we call the platinum rule in marketing. So the platinum rule is do unto others as they would do unto themselves. In other words, speak their language. We've all traveled, right? So if I'm going to be in Paris, I'm not going to be as effective if I'm speaking in American how to get a croissant or whatever the case may be. If I'm in Prague, the same thing. So what this means is that you need to understand the language to use as you are speaking with everybody of the different generations. Now, obviously, it's going to be easier if it's one-on-one. It's going to be harder if you're going to be speaking with everybody in the room at the same time, and we'll go through both cases very quickly. So let's think about baby boomers first, right? So baby boomers, it's the we generation, it's team generation, it's consensus, it's about making a difference. So you're going to use that language as you are speaking with them. Now, again, if you're speaking directly to them, it's much easier. If you're speaking one-on-one with a Gen X, you're going to switch up your language. This is not about the big, wide macro anymore with Gen X, so it's going to be more about them, what's in it for them, the benefit to them, how they're going to be recognized. We do like our perks in terms of Gen X. We were the first early adopters of technology, and so how to recognize us. So it's much more about the data and the numbers. You're going to tailor your language. And then when you get back to Gen Y, the good news is the pendulum swings, right? So if you think about it, Gen Y and boomers actually have a lot in common. That's the good news. Two biggest generations have a lot in common. Difference is their approach and their methodology. Not insurmountable, but there is a difference there. Gen X is the monkey in the middle. But when we swing back to Gen Y, we're back to we, we're back to team, we're back to making a difference. So it's easier when you have Ys and boomers in the room. If you have all three, you're going to have to pepper it. So let me give you a quick example so you can understand what I mean. So say, for example, I'm speaking to a boomer, directly just to a boomer one-on-one. And we're talking about perhaps funding a second home or something like that. And so I'm going to say, so, Marie, let's talk about this. I know you've been looking into this. I know you want the features and benefits. Let me give you the big picture. If you buy into this community, you are going to be with people who are already making a difference in terms of their local community. You are going to help this community based on everything that you bring in. So you can start to say that I'm speaking to them and I'm talking about community. Now let's say I'm talking to a Gen X, and let's just say it happens to be a Gen X's second home. And it's the same community, may even be the same home. And I'm going to switch up my language, though. And I'm going to say, so Tomas, let's talk about this home and how it's going to look for you to have this home. Here are the numbers. Here's the data. You can see that it's got a great ROI. And I know that you are going to be a leader in your industry by buying in this home. You're going to be one of the first people to buy in this community, which shows your foresight, which shows how well that you are looking at the details and how much you will be able to add to this community. So same home, same community, but I switched it up. Some people say to me, Ann, you're being disingenuous. I'm not being disingenuous. My values are still the same. I'm switching up my language. And then I'll go and say, for example, maybe it's the first home for the Gen Y. Same home, same community, and I would be switching it up, and I'd say, so let's take a look at this, Edward. So I know that you're really interested in this, and I know how important it is for you to be with like-minded people in a diverse area. So let's talk about the diversity of the schools. Let's talk about the diversity of the people you'll be living with. Let's talk about the diversity of the industries. So all of you do this very well, I know, because that's why you're the top loan officers. That's why you're part of this organization. And just knowing these few words and these few nuances that you're going to be using as you're speaking to each of these people is going to help you be more effective. And I'm just going to do one more thing, and then I'm going to wrap it up and give it back to Dan and Dave, is that nobody of us says, well, Ann, that's great if I'm one-on-one, but, I've got everybody in the room. Perhaps I've got a Gen X and a boomer. Maybe I've got a blended family. I've got all three. How the heck am I supposed to do that? This does take a little bit more practice. It is not rocket science. You guys crunch your numbers. That's harder than this is right here. All this is practicing, and what you're going to do is you're going to do exactly what I just did, and you're just going to pepper it throughout the conversation. So you're going to be looking at Marie, then you're going to be looking at Tomas, then you're going to be looking at Edward, and you're just going to pepper this to stay engaged throughout the whole way. And I'm just going to end on this note is that you really need to make sure that you're engaging Gen Y. Gen Y has the attention span of 33 seconds, and so we constantly have to give new ways to keep them engaged in the conversation and to make sure that we're using all the different modalities of video, podcast, conversations, written, etc., to make sure that they stay engaged. So, Dave, I could go on forever, but I want to really hear what Dan has to say, so I'm going to end it here for now, and let you take the ball over to the last half of the afternoon.
Fantastic. So again, great, great kickoff to the new year. There's been a lot of people ask for your email address. I'm going to give it to everybody in just 1 second. But just to net this out, because I have people ask me all the time, who is Gen X? Who is Gen Y? Gen Y, which includes millennials, are 14 to 34. Gen X, 35 to 49, and 50 to 69 is a boomer. So that's the definition. Now, if you want to get Ann's cheat sheet, which I highly recommend that you guys get it, download it, print it, put it in your work area, get intentional around who your customers are and how you could better connect with them. So there is her email address. It's a 2-page cheat sheet, Loehr.com. I also posted this on our Facebook page, so if you didn't write it down, you didn't remember it, you have it. I'll give you guys one more reminder later on before we get into it. So part of kicking off this new year, I've already booked speakers really for the first quarter. I've got Darren Hardy speaking. I've got Tom Ferry speaking. But as we start the year, we need to make sure that we're prepared for a lot of changes that are taking place. Like I talked earlier, we're going to have a new integrated disclosures. It's going to be the biggest change in our sales process ever. We're going to have more millennials enter the home buying market than ever. And I want to help you guys be prepared for that. So that's one reason why I brought Ann in. I also interviewed Chris Geldu, who is, he's one of America's top bloggers. I'm not talking about, top 10 or top 20. Literally one of the top 3 to 5 bloggers in the country. I interviewed him a few weeks ago, or not a few weeks, last week, and I want you guys to check that out. So we have not formally promoted it, but everybody that comes to these calls, you're our Mortgage Coach insiders. I put a link to it. If you see where we promoted Ann's call today, I put a link to that call and another one that I did last week that I think are particularly important. So I just want to make sure that everybody's getting smart on who's a millennial and how do we connect with them. And then again, for many of us, we're boomers. I turned 50 this year. So I really don't think of myself as a boomer when I see those character traits. I think I'm more of a millennial or a Gen X. But nevertheless, I think it's a mindset, it's a mentality, and all I know is I want to help Mortgage Coach loan officers be much more successful as we have all these huge changes in the market. So Dan, anything you want to say about Ann's presentation before we bring it to you? And you're a great Gen X leader who I think is well positioned to just slay it when it comes to helping, connecting, and delivering value with Gen Y. But anything you want to say as a wrap-up before we get into you?
Yeah, I read a lot of blog posts on, from Realtor.com and other real estate websites, forums, and I see a lot of negative comments surrounding, right now you're seeing every real estate agent that we all know on Facebook just promoting, hey, now's the best time to buy, buy now, why 2015 is going to be the year of the home buyer and the year of the millennial. And so I go to these websites, these blog posts, and then down below, and I encourage everybody else on this call to do the same, read the comments that readers are responding to these blog posts. And I think you're going to find there's a lot of the comments are negative. So Ann, one of the questions I have for you is understanding what we all went through in the mid-2000s, early 2000s with the housing boom, the stock market boom, and then the collapse. Do you have any advice to us on how to maybe approach selling to the baby boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, with that kind of in the back of our minds? Because I do get resistance from time to time from people as we sell, and they're hesitant. Before we even talk about mortgages, they're like, well, this isn't an ARM, is it? We're not talking. No, we haven't even talked about loan programs yet, and you're already bringing up ARMs. So do you have any advice for us there?
Mm-hmm. So I have 2 pieces of advice. So the first is that let's talk about Gen X. So again, remember Gen X is seen, not necessarily true, but perceived as cynical, as distrustful. We have done our numbers 20 times. We need to know every single detail. Again, it makes boomers crazy, but that's the way Gen X is. So my recommendation is patience. with them, making sure that you are giving them all the information that they need. They've already checked it all out 10 times before they even went to you. And it really is going to be at this point about patience and relationship building. It's not about numbers. It's not about, you know, if you got the better rate, whatever. It's going to be about that, do they trust you? So everything that we've talked so far about is understanding them. This is a different kettle of fish, more in the leadership world, of how to create trust so that Gen X trusts you to give you their hard-earned money. I'm just going to flip to Gen Y, and then I want to make sure we have time to hear what you have to say, Dan, is that Gen Y is known as the rental generation, or as R-E-N-T-A-L. So they rent dresses, they rent cars, they rent everything. So again, they're not as cynical and distrustful as Gen X is. They're very open, they're very worldly, global citizens. However, it's a different mindset to own versus than to rent, because they're so used to renting everything. So again, it's just going to be education, because this generation has the highest number of college degrees, Gen Y. And so those who have a college degree expect to get a second or a third. So they really value education. So with Gen X, it's more about building trust. With Gen Y, it's much more about education. Why is it important? When do you start buying? All that kind of thing.
Wow. That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah. First of all, great question, Dan. And I think I like the answer a lot. I mean, at Mortgage Coach, you know, we are, you know, deeply dedicated to not selling but educating. And the way we sell is educate. So let's break this down, and then Dan, let's get into some examples of how you're delivering in the marketplace. So when I think of education, and Ann did, I think, just a great job of getting into the psychographics, getting into the language, but let's talk about the channels, you know, the technology piece. Because when you look at how, not just Gen Y, but Gen X, it's not just what you say, it's where you say it. Especially, you know, the millennials, they are living on their mobile devices. And I think evidence of that is how popular what they call the ZTR effect, you know, the MLS in the back pocket. Everybody has a mobile device. Everybody has the ability to check prices. And by the way, for mortgage professionals, what's that mean? It means that it's easier to shop rates, and whether they're shopping or they're just getting a second opinion, they're able to both shop for homes. You know, when you look at the biggest real estate company in America and all of the biggest real estate companies in America, they are, you know, they're developing mobile experiences for the new generation. So I think where, you know, from a mortgage coach perspective, the focus is two things. It's one, the mobile tech, and it's two, how do we really educate in a way that's a wow, you know, in an Instagram quality way? How do we do that? So again, it's no secret, and I've been evangelizing this for a long time, that as mortgage coaches, we need to be able to take what we're doing, an everyday pre-qualification, you know, a rent versus own, you know, whatever we're doing and however we're doing it, we need to turn it into, you know, a mobile experience with mobile tech, and we need to go beyond just quoting rates and fees, and we need to provide people with empowerment. And again, I hear a lot of loan officers, well, I don't need to do that to win the business. Well, you need to do it if you want to win the trust. You know, if you want to win trust quickly and effectively, you need to use mobile tech, video, and you need to deliver information and insight where the millennial wants it, and even the Gen X. And really, I think there's kind of a new term, at least in the mortgage and real estate space. It is the folks. It's that ZTR, someone that is mobile savvy and educating themselves. You know, how can we do that? So Dan, I think it's a good place to bring you in and really focus on different approaches that you're taking in your marketplace to, one, be a technology and video leader, and two, to serve this new next generation of home buyer.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like after listening to Ann, I've kind of been just, you know, throwing it up and hoping it goes in the hoop. You know, I love Mortgage Coach, and I've been a big Mortgage Coach user. I love, you know, the video aspect and the total cost analysis aspect of having all the information there. But really, after listening to Ann, I know my big takeaway is I'm going to be able to be more focused, more ultra focused on presenting to different audiences. But the picture that you see on the screen right now is Amazon, downtown Seattle. And every single one of the clients, my clients that I finance down there, they're 24 to 26 years of age. And I've said this before on mortgage coach calls, the number one comment that I get from them, the very first comment that I get from them when we do touch base on the phone is, wow, what kind of technology, what are you using to make that video and that report? That was pretty cool. And so obviously they like it. This is how they enjoy looking at their mortgage options. I will say this, I think you just mentioned this with the Generation Y being on their mobile device. Most of the time, these clients come to me and they already have an idea of what rates are. They already have an idea of what rate they want, what program they want. So they've done the research. So, I mean, I think kind of explaining the slide that you put up, it's how I run my business, whether it's a baby boomer or a client downtown Seattle. But I was really excited for this call, Dave, because north of Seattle, east of Seattle, west of Seattle, and south of downtown Seattle, you have a 180-degree different client. So it's it was a great call, great information on that, on how to talk to each one of those clients.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, I think a big takeaway for everybody is there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. There's the context and the technology, and then there's the psychology and the values driving the person. Although I've been preparing for a coaching call with one of the top realtors in the Indiana market, Coach Glenn Bill, and he's been forwarding me emails that he gets from loan officers. And he's just been sending me kind of like he gets the marketing message and he gives me his top of mind thoughts. And I have about a half a dozen other realtors doing the same thing. And the thing that I've noticed is that, I see a lot of really crappy marketing, but you know what? I see some really good marketing. But the thing that I'm noticing, what matters most is the context. I've seen some really nice, well done marketing messages that the realtor's getting, and they're just like, you don't know me. Why are you sending this to me? And I'm like, that's good marketing. And then I've seen some okay marketing that the realtor's like, oh, this was valuable and I appreciated it. And so what I'm realizing so much, it's quality, but it's the context that matters most. So I mean, one thing that I love about you, Dan, is you're just the master of context. So let's go through a few other examples, and again, feel free to comment on that if you want.
Yeah, I mean, this example here is, and a lot of focus is on tech. And I guess the reason why I sent you this slide, Dave, is I don't just hide behind my laptop. This is kind of the high-tech, high-touch approach. So this is a way where I'm out in the field. I actually made these for an open house, Brokers Open and open house that I've done. My wife happens to, make baked goods, and so if I do go out and work an open house, I'm bringing a treat to set out. We're taking water bottles and putting our labels on them with our contact info. We've got pens that have our information on them, and so it's not just everything. I'm not just doing video and making websites. It's kind of high tech, high touch, blending it together, and it's a conversation starter at the least.
Well, one thing I like about this post is, one, again, the high touch. And then two, you put in some high tech. There's a mortgage coach edge link driving an educational experience. Mm-hmm. Hey, by the way, we got to give your wife a shout out. She doesn't just like baked goods. I mean, Jenny's Cookies, she's on fire, and I think her Instagram page is my wife's favorite. I mean, she's always posting really cool and creative pictures of just doing life and baking cool things. How can anybody in the mortgage space get to know more about your wife? We got to give her a shout out.
Absolutely, yes, agreed.
Well, what's her website for everybody?
Well, JennyCookies.com. JennyCookies.
Yeah, check out his wife's page. She's doing amazing things in that market. So, sorry, Dan, but had to share the love. I know you probably
No, and Dave, I mean, to tie it in, the really neat thing about my wife is organically, this is organic 100%, the girl out of Lake Stevens, Washington gets hired by celebrities down in California to come down and do events just because obviously she's so creative. But 15,000 plus followers on Instagram, and I've watched her grow it. I mean, I've watched her go from 300 followers to 3,000 to 10,000, and so it's really neat to see how. I know you just interviewed Chris Gulabou. I think I maybe butchered his last name. And a lot of the things he talked about in regards to what he does in blogging and presenting his message, it's everything that he said, and I highly encourage everybody on this call to listen to that interview. It's the truth, and it's exactly what she does.
Well, she's doing a great job, and cheers to the Keller family. So, guys, let's kind of keep it in the mortgage space. So we're talking about your online presence. We're talking about mobile technology. Again, Dan, one of the ways that you got on my radar several years ago, I think it was this blog. I saw it, and then I think you did some type of mortgage coach post, and I'm like, what? This guy is a mortgage coach user, but what are we looking at here, and how are you using this in the marketplace?
Well, you just talked about contacts. You talked about real estate agents getting stuff from other lenders, and if I just never have spammed realtors. I take a lot of them out to lunch. We hang out a lot and do business and life together, and the last thing I want to do is not annoy them, but look silly to them. And so if I was going to build a list, and obviously I blog, and everything that I read and studying internet marketing and blogging is the power, the fortune is in your list. And so you want to create a list. And so what I did is I started this weekly, I call it Coffee with Keller, but I send out a weekly email to real estate agents and explain kind of what's going on with the market, but I try to always add value. Everything that I do, I want to bring value. So I read a book, or I'll listen to a Tom Ferry video on YouTube, a 4 or 5 minute video. I'll summarize it, and then I'll post a link. And then, I always summarize my Coffee with Keller episodes with, a market update, a Mortgage Minute with Dan. And, for example, I got a lot of calls on this, but about 3 weeks ago, I took my family to Disneyland for Christmas. And it just so happened that Fannie Mae released their new loan program. The 3% down's coming back. Mortgage interest rates had dropped again down into the threes. And so I'm like, what a better time. There you go, right there. With this slide. What a better time to do a quick Coffee with Keller episode, but more specifically, I just did a 15-second Instagram video on kind of what's going on in the market. And you know what, just the fact that I was on Main Street, I think that's what they call it in Disneyland, with 15, 20,000 people in the background was awesome. And I got a lot of feedback on that. And so, context is huge, content is huge. But that's what Coffee with Keller is kind of all about. It's an opportunity for me to kind of showcase what I'm doing.
Right on. Well, let's. I want to wrap things up with some action items for the last 5 minutes, but let's spend another 7 or 8 minutes kind of walk through how you're using Mortgage Coach to educate families. Or this one looks like a rent versus own. Kind of walk us through what you did here. And then, by the way, everybody, I don't know if I'll share a link to this because this might be something that Dan doesn't want to share, but we'll share some type of rent versus own analysis on the Mortgage Coach Facebook page that promotes this call. But Dan, walk us through what we're looking at here.
Yeah, this is my most recent rent versus own analysis, and this is a product of me going online again and reading some of these blog comments on Realtor.com, just going to Zillow and Truly and just reading comments from people. And I'm seeing there's a lot of, there's people that want to know the other side of the spectrum. Okay, everybody's saying now's a good time to buy, but nobody's really saying why. And, Realtor.com came out and published 10 reasons to purchase in 2015. And you know what? 8 of those 10 reasons were not valid, great reasons to a Gen Y or even a Gen X who went through what we went through in mid-2000s. So what I did is I put together a report, and obviously I'm showing the benefits of home ownership right now. But the purpose of this report, if you watch this video, it's to say, hey, it's dispelling some of those, I don't want to say myths, but sales pitches to purchase right now. But at the end, you'll see the second column is waiting to buy. What you're going to find out, look at the TCA right there, even if you decide now's not the great time to buy, and we're going to wait, and we're going to wait until the middle end of this year and rates go up to 4.625, it's still a benefit to purchase versus renting. It's still, you're still saving $77 a month versus renting. And so that was kind of the purpose of this presentation. I threw it out on Facebook. I'm going to continue to share. I'm actually going to send this out to my real estate agents and say, hey, listen, instead of, selling everybody on why it's a good time to buy, explain why, and then explain, hey, if you don't want to purchase right now, it's important to understand the factors that you need to consider when it is time to purchase a home. And you can feel free to, send the link out if you want, Dave. I don't care. I think this is the message. This is the message that customers need to see. I think they're tired of being sold.
Beautiful. Well, I like that. They don't want to be sold. They want to be educated, and they want to be straight with me. And I love the point you made that, I see so many articles that are like, here's the 10 reasons, 8 reasons, and you read it, and literally 80% of them are fluff. They're just like, how big can I get the list? And 2 or 3 are like, yeah, that's signal. That mattered. And so I guess that's kind of one takeaway. When you think of all your content that you're creating, less is more, and cut the fluff. I mean, Gen Y doesn't want it. Gen X doesn't want it. And by the way, I just think in today's society where it's information overload, less is more, and everybody reads through the fluff. Context is king, and less is more. So great educational experience, Dan. What's this one? What are we looking at here?
So this is an open house flyer that I made for a real estate agent that I had the opportunity to do the open house with. And so it basically is just explaining the options. But it was the cool thing about this particular presentation was the response that I got from the seller and the response that I got from the agent that had never seen anything like this. It was pretty neat. And so that's why I just sent you this slide. And it happened to be in an area where, there was an opportunity to present a USDA zero-down option and the benefit of using that program as it compares to FHA and a conventional 5% down program. And I didn't do the mortgage on it, but this house sold to a USDA buyer.
Beautiful. So you help wrap a strategy, package a mortgage strategy, and you help sell the home. And I'm sure you've built some clients and relationships through that.
Absolutely.
Great. So one more case study, kind of success story, and then let's kind of wrap it up with some action items.
Yeah, this one here, and this is a product, and the reason why I sent you this slide. Look at the background. I mean, I'm doing this from my back porch on a Saturday morning. So I called one of my real estate agent partners. Typically, I call him on a Thursday. I didn't get to him. I called him on a Friday. He mentioned he was doing an open house that weekend. I did not have the opportunity to help him out on this one. However, I did up some flyers, and I did this report. He had his iPad available, and the really neat thing about this particular video is I shot it, he shared it, and I can tell, obviously, we can tell when people view it, and throughout the day, I'm getting emails that this link's getting viewed, and so the agent was happy, stoked that I was able to provide something like this, but the message was fantastic on this one too, because it happened to be in an area where there's a lot of myths that you need 20% down to purchase. And again, the person that purchased this home did not use me, but they bought with a 5% down conventional loan. And so whether or not this had anything to do with it, maybe their agent came through, saw this, it's just, it's outside of what traditional people in this area were thinking, that we needed 20% to purchase this home.
Beautiful. So again, great job of delivering education, doing it in a unique way that's valuable to everybody involved. I'm going to get with Dan after the call, everybody. I'm going to see what examples he's willing to let me share. And when we post the recording of this call, in the description of the call, there'll be a few links so you guys can have some examples. So again, think of it this way. Whether it's Gen X, Gen Y, and for that matter, pretty much anybody in the world right now, they want something, an elevated, a next level experience. And this is how most realtors and loan officers educate within the home. As a mortgage coach, guys, you can create a mortgage coach experience that brings mortgage options to the customer in a way that is more transparent and in a way that delivers more value and in a way that's unique. These are actual samples of mortgage coach at open houses. So by the way, if you're on this call, I would love to get more pictures like this of mortgage coach running wild out in the marketplace. So if you've got a realtor that is displaying your mortgage options in a way that's useful and valuable on mobile, email those to me at Dave@MortgageCoach. So to make this actionable, every Tuesday at 9 o'clock we're doing this call. Every Thursday at 9 o'clock we're doing, tactical, technical training, how to do this stuff, and then Fridays for beginners. I made a video that I would say what I'm going to go through over the next 5 minutes. I took about 25 minutes with a branch manager. This is a branch manager who's got a branch that's closing 900 loans a year. So we're talking mega branch, super successful mortgage professional, and we're talking about how to create mortgage coach habits within your organizations. So by the way, that's both in our YouTube channel and also in the promotion of today's call. There's a link to that video. So this is a homework assignment I'm giving to all you guys, and this is why it's so important, folks. Is we know that big RESPA changes are happening in August. We know immediately preceding that is the home buying season, and so there's a real opportunity right now in January and February to prepare ourselves. So with the new disclosures, it's going to become mandated. It's going to become a requirement that every borrower knows what the cost of loan is over 5 years. So it's going to be really important that everybody in the industry and everybody on this call, you guys get your scripting together right now, January and February. So the opportunity is this, to take the borrower experience, how you're quoting rates, how you're doing pre-qualifications, and really nailing that right now. Don't wait until August or July to do it, because here's the deal. This is what the new GFE looks like, page 3. And Dan, have you gone through any of my training? Is this the first time you're seeing this message, or have I taken you through this before?
No, we've seen this, yeah.
Okay, got it. So anybody on this call, by the way, I would love to know, and I'm not going to do a poll, what percentage of the industry really knows the change that's getting ready to happen, that we can't just quote rates and fees. We need to show total cost over time. And let's face it, doing that in a fee worksheet, doing that the way you're doing it right now, just doesn't cut it. So, I mean, everybody on this call, you're already a mortgage coach, but now you need to take it to a new level. When you quote payments, make sure you do it in Mortgage Coach. Make sure that you start showing everybody the cost of the loan over 60 months. Start now. Do not wait until you have to do it, until it's mandated. Do it now. Make sure that your borrowers understand what their cost is from a monthly standpoint like you're doing now, but make sure every time that you quote rates and payments, you're showing them what the cost is over 60 months. Again, that's what we do here at Mortgage Coach. We make that really simple, whether it's on a desktop, whether it's on a mobile device. We help you deliver this advice in a way that's a competitive advantage. So the kind of the takeaway, and hopefully everybody over the next 60 days that's a mortgage coach, you're going to start total cost selling now. You're not going to wait until you have to do it. So if you're on this call, please watch this video that I created with Tom. Also share this with your branch manager. My goal is to make it an initiative for everybody in the mortgage coach community to really master what I call total cost selling in January. Let's make this our priority so that we just crush it through the spring home buying season, and we have an even bigger competitive advantage coming into new compliance requirements. So next week I've got Roberto Monaco as our special guest. We're going to be drilling down on public speaking, presentation skills, and we're going to be drilling down on how to make a great video. And everybody's ever heard Roberto before. It's a video that creates influence, a video that gets people to take action. So we've got about a minute left here. I want to get some parting thoughts from Ann. Dan, why don't you go first, and then Ann, why don't you wrap up the call after hearing Dan's message with any parting thoughts? Dan?
Well, I think this is one of the more valuable calls that I've ever been on. So, Ann, very, very good job. I think it just confirms what you and Chris spoke about the other day on your call with him, that it's not about how to compete in a new age, in a new world of selling. It's how to create value in the millennial age. And I absolutely loved it, Ann. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for both of you. And just want to emphasize, Dan, that you're doing exactly what needs to be done. Just super, super quick. So what we're doing now in terms of marketing, even education at universities, is we're breaking things down into 4 to 5 minute chunks. So exactly what you're doing, a little bit of a video, conversation, podcasts, putting it all together, that's the way to reach Gen Y especially, and even Gen X. So you're doing it perfectly. So thanks for the examples that showed that up.
Right on.
Right on. So everybody, let us know what you thought of today's call from a good to great level. If you are a guest on this call, you're listening with a Mortgage Coach member, click on the You'd Like to Learn More tab. But let us know what you thought of today's call, and I thought you knocked it out of the park. You were definitely invited back to a Mortgage Coach call. If you guys feel the same way that Ann should become someone that we interview a couple times a year, if you could, in the question area, tell me what you would like a future topic for Ann and I to talk about. I know one thing that just came to mind, Ann, is, how can Gen X and Boomers sell to Gen Y better? We just net it out, and we make the call around that, Ann. So you're invited back. Everybody, please, if you'd like to have Ann back, let us know what you'd like to have us talk about. Ann, thank you so much for the prep for this call and for the value delivered. And Dan, to you too. I'm grateful for your participation, bro.
You got it. Thank you both.
All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great day, and let's have an awesome 2015. Take care.